This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
Lynch is going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
What's going on, everybody, guys and girls? Welcome back to another edition of the SmackDown review right here on the WWE Podcast. As always, I am one of the hosts of this show, Michael Ritter. You can find me on X at Michael5Ritter, on Instagram at MichaelRitter5, and also one of the hosts of the Football Function podcast, available on all your podcasting platforms, including the one that you are listening to this show on right now, and also available on Patreon if you prefer an ad-free listening experience. Hope you guys are all doing well here on this Saturday afternoon. It's May 11th. I just finished watching SmackDown. I think it was a pretty good episode, honestly. I didn't have really high expectations or high hopes, just because I feel like SmackDown since WrestleMania has kind of just turned it down a couple notches, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I do think they're kind of testing out a few things and setting themselves up for probably what's going to be a pretty entertaining summer as we get into SummerSlam. But as far as the actual, show was concerned, quite a few matches. They were hammering a lot of the first round of the King and Queen of the Ring tournaments. So we got a lot of action in that regard. And that's pretty much just where the wrestling was focused. You could tell that they were trying to dedicate a lot of the in-ring action to the King and Queen of the Ring tournaments. And they were, I guess, just giving, the mic work and all of the interviews to a lot of the other wrestlers, such as, Cody Rhodes, who opened the show, obviously, which we will get into as we break down this episode of SmackDown. But I just thought that as far as the actual matches were concerned, they all did well. Like, it was a pretty good day of wrestling for the SmackDown brand, if I had to say so myself. I just thought, none of the matches were sloppy. None of the matches felt like they were redundant or anything like that. I felt like they all kind of delivered in their own way, and I'm looking forward to talking about them with you guys. But first off, I did want to say that I'm not sure if you guys, do any figure shopping on, Ringside Collectibles, Mattel, or just out on your everyday stores, going to Target, going to Walmart. Me personally, I like to go to the flea market and places like that. If you're in a bigger city, they actually have, vintage toy stores that are, built to sell wrestling figures and, Star Wars figures and all types of other things. But I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with what a full-scale ring is. Now, obviously, you can go to Walmart, Target, online, one of the, stores I just mentioned, and you can buy any type of, wrestling ring, as far as, SmackDown ring, a Raw ring. You can get WrestleMania and, the old school WWF themed. But a full-scale ring is a little bit different. Now, those rings that I was just talking about, those are going to run you, $20 to $30. Not too expensive because they're so simple. They're just a bunch of plastic. The only thing that really moves on the ring is the ropes, and then that very loud spring, that makes the ring actually kind of bounce a little bit. And those are perfectly fine. Like if you just have a young child or something and you want to get him something that's not going to just demolish your bank account, or, he's going to outgrow, or if he may not be into wrestling that much to where he would spend the time that needs to be spent there for you to feel like it was a reasonable purchase. Because a full-scale ring, they run you about $150. Just, they're not all that expensive. Some are about $120. But the one that I got here recently for Jet was the WCW Monday Nitro full-scale ring. It came with an Eric Bischoff, an Ultimate Eric Bischoff figure. So the ring itself is just impeccable. There's videos online, like on YouTube, of people putting theirs together. And it really kind of fills you in on the articulation and the detail that really went into making these rings look as good as they do. And, not only did I get the ring, but I also got an announce table the barricade. It's like a 27-piece barricade and floor mat that kind of goes, or ring mat. I don't really know what you would call it. It's the black cloth, I guess, that the ring itself goes on and the barricade goes on. It looks extremely realistic. I'm going to send a picture to the Discord chat. So those of you that are subscribed on Patreon, you're going to get a chance to see the ring and the barricade area kind of fully set up. But I'm not done there. There are other things. There's just guardrails that you can buy on Amazon. There's the scaffold type 4 corners where you can maybe do a steel cage. Speaking of a steel cage, they have a steel cage that is perfectly sized for this massive full-scale ring. So I'm looking forward to continuing getting accessories and making the the ring look as legit as possible. Shout out to eBay, because there are people out there that custom make things, and they sell them on eBay, and that's just legitimately things that you can't get at a store or anywhere else. So I've always been a frequent eBay shopper. It's one of the things a lot of people feel skeptical about using eBay because they don't get to try on if they're buying clothes or something that you can wear, or they really don't know the seller. And they don't really know, how trustworthy they are. But I will say, just from my experience on eBay, if something doesn't go your way, if you buy something and it comes in and it's not what you thought. For example, there has been times where I wasn't exactly pleased with what I got. I got a championship belt off of eBay, and they probably didn't think they were selling to an absolute wrestling fanatic. They probably just thought they were, someone wants to buy a wrestling belt on eBay. So I got an Intercontinental Championship, the one from the Ruthless Aggression era. And it very clearly wasn't the belt that was in the photo. Now, I knew what I was paying for wasn't going to be 100% top-notch quality. It wasn't going to be the $390 belts or the $280 belts that you can buy on WWEshop.com. But it is extremely similar to that. And I kind of knew from the jump just what I was paying for and what I was supposed to receive. I knew it wasn't going to be an extremely top-notch, top-of-the-line piece of quality, but I knew that it was going to be good enough for what I wanted to do with it, which is just display it on my shelf and, have it out here in my studio and things like that. But it was pretty clear that it wasn't the belt that was in the photo. And I messaged the seller. I very clearly and very politely said, hey, this is the belt that I received. I sent multiple pictures of it. And if you look, I pointed out the exact details on, where there were differences and how I knew that this wasn't the belt. And they were like, oh, I apologize about that. That was somebody below me, this and that. And, it wasn't my fault. What they'll do is they'll offer you a refund or, maybe try to switch it out with what they know is what you paid for. Because usually, they have a lot of belts in their inventory. These types of people that sell belts on eBay, of course, you'll find a person that, hey, I just want to sell my World Heavyweight Championship, so I'm going to go to eBay and see if I can get somebody to make an offer for it. You will come across those types of people, but it's pretty clear that there's a specific industry on eBay that sells knockoff championship belts. And if you make that negative review, if you complain about somebody to eBay and you say, hey, this person didn't do right by me and this is why, eBay will literally suspend and lock their account to where all they can do is communicate with you. They can't really access anything else on their account. And what that means is the only way that it can get solved is if they solve it with you. So then they'll be messaging you, this is exactly what happened. The person that, sent me that championship belt, he tried to just give me all right, well, here's the deal. I'll give you another belt for a really discounted price. And I said, absolutely not. I either want my money back or I want you to send me the belt that I thought I was getting. He knew that I was in the right and I had, a legitimate reason to complain there. So his account was locked and it wasn't going to be unlocked until I went and changed my review. And I said, all right, he did make it right, which is pretty much exactly what happened because he did end up sending me the belt that I wanted. But it just goes to show, and that's kind of a long-winded answer and a long-winded off-topic explanation as to why I do trust eBay is because, yes, if something negative does happen, which is a possibility, anytime you buy something online, eBay at least has, the resources and the willingness to help you make it right and to, make sure that you at least get what you paid for or your money back, one of the two. But nonetheless, we're going to stop bantering and, stop the pre-show chatter and get into this episode of SmackDown. Like I said, this one aired last night, May 10th, 2024. This is the 195th SmackDown review that I'm doing here for the WWE podcast. And let's go ahead and jump right into it, shall we? This one started off with Nick Aldis opening the show and welcoming the undisputed WWE Champion Cody Rhodes to the ring. And the reason for him welcoming Cody Rhodes was because he wanted to give him a little bit of a shout out for what he did at Backlash, obviously beating AJ Styles, but he also wanted to announce his new challenger for the undisputed WWE Championship. And one thing that kind of jumped out to me whenever Nick Aldis was speaking here is he mentioned Backlash and Cody Rhodes getting the win. He talked about AJ Styles, and he said it's always a pretty impressive feat anytime you can beat the best wrestler of his generation. And that kind of really stuck with me because, you don't really think about it. I know some people will acknowledge it pretty frequently, but because AJ Styles wasn't in WWE for his prime and for, a huge chunk of his career now, he's been in WWE for a very long time. I'm pretty sure there's a stat out there that he's actually wrestled more matches in WWE than he ever wrestled in TNA. So in terms of his actual career, he may have spent more of a longer time here in WWE. But the memories were made. It doesn't really matter in terms of quantity. It's all about the quality. And he's obviously put on a lot of quality matches here in WWE. That's not really what I'm saying. I'm more so saying that the wrestling fandom that I had from 2002 to 2005, only a 3 to 4 year sample size, just as, if not more impactful, as a 15 plus year sample size, however long I've been watching wrestling now, you can date back to, we'll say 2014 to 2024, 10 to 11 years, it still isn't necessarily as impactful as that little 3 to 4 year span back whenever, it was the Ruthless Aggression era and I was a diehard wrestling fan as a child. And that's kind of the same thing with AJ Styles, is just because he's been in WWE for so long and he's done so much, it doesn't mean that the moments that he had early in his career and that run where TNA was really trying to go at WWE in a more, I don't want to say respectful way because it's still competition, it's still a business, but I guess it was just less petty back then. If you look at, what Tony Khan and the way AEW goes about this whole, we want to take down WWE, they're the monster, they're the big corporation, the Coca-Cola, whatever, I feel like TNA, they were doing it from more like we want to do it in the ring. Like, we want to show you up in the ring and have a damn good product. Now, did they ever come close to beating WWE? Hell no. Like, obviously not. They're the only company to ever, actually make WWE bleed. Like, if they're in there trading punches, they actually landed some shots on WWE, is WCW. Other than that, WWE isn't losing any sleep over any, wrestling promotion. In fact, it's like they actually like the competition. It brings out the best in them. But I don't think anybody really wants to go toe-to-toe with WWE right now in the year 2024 in the quote-unquote Logan Paul Levesque era. Obviously, that was a reference from Logan Paul's promo he cut a little bit later in the show. But, another kind of off-topic, long explanation for me to just say, like, yeah, I agree. AJ Styles is the best wrestler of his generation. Like, who else would you compare? I mean, technically, he's in the same era as Kurt Angle, right? Like, a little bit later, maybe? Like, AJ Styles came in a little bit later than Kurt Angle as far as, like, on the actual map. Like, in terms of professional wrestling, yes, AJ Styles has probably had a longer career than Kurt Angle just because he probably has been doing it since he was extremely young. Kurt Angle was an Olympic amateur wrestler. And WWE pretty much just wanted to bring him in. And go watch a documentary on Kurt Angle. They'll tell the whole story. But, Kurt Angle's up there for me, in terms of that era. AJ Styles, just because he's still going. Look at Randy Orton. He's still going at a pretty old age. And, old in terms of, like, exposure. Like, I know there are some wrestlers that don't pick it up until late. Like Charlotte Flair. She didn't start wrestling until 27, 28 years old or whatever it was. Whenever you got Rhea Ripley, who's been on the main roster since she was 23, absolutely killing it since she was just in her early 20s. Everybody's path to being a pro wrestler is different. But when I look at AJ Styles and his generation, if you're talking about him being the best of a generation, we're talking about obviously Eddie Guerrero. We're talking about Chris Benoit. We're talking about Kurt Angle, like I just mentioned, Shawn Michaels. There's quite a bit of wrestlers who have come through over the 2000s, late 90s, all throughout the 2000s and into the 20 teens, which is crazy to think about. It's just been so many decades of these guys just kicking ass. But I look at a guy like AJ Styles, and I have no problem saying that he was the best of his generation. Obviously, John Cena, another one. Randy Orton, Edge. So many wrestlers came during that time period. But AJ Styles was just so consistent, man. Like his peak, he's like Rey Mysterio in terms of just not declining in the ring. He's sticking around for a very, very long time. But whenever you watch him put on a match, man, he can still go with the best of them. So I just wanted to kind of co-sign on what Nick Aldis said there. And I know there's probably a connection from them from a long time ago. Nick probably has a huge deal of respect and admiration for AJ Styles. And I just pretty much feel like he was preaching right there. But nonetheless, where was I? Oh, yeah, he invited Cody Rhodes to the ring to tell him that his next challenger has been determined. And he actually introduces him right there. And to my surprise, it's the United States champion, Logan Paul. And we do in fact get the announcement that we're getting a champion versus champion pay-per-view or main event match at the pay-per-view, King and Queen of the Ring, which is a little bit too much. It's a little bit of a mouthful. King and Queen of the Ring, I get it. You want to keep the King of the Ring, but you also want to feature the women's side of it, and you don't want to seem like you're focused just only on the men. Totally understand, why you would do that, but at the same time, just rename it. Just rename the pay-per-view something that rolls off the tongue a little bit better. Because I just feel like, King and Queen of the Ring, it has not sit well with me since it was introduced maybe last year, the year before, whenever the hell it was. Not my cup of tea, but, I'm not going to complain about it. It's just something that I kind of wrote down here, like, come on, let's get a new name. But Logan Paul grabs the mic, and he tells us that he is the longest reigning champion currently in WWE. He's also the biggest attraction in WWE, and he says that he just had the best rookie year of anybody in the company's history. He also mentioned that he and Cody Rhodes both debuted on the same night at WrestleMania 38. I put debuted in quotes. Obviously, Cody Rhodes, he returned WrestleMania 38, where Logan Paul had his first match. Big, big difference. But Logan Paul then calls himself the rocket fuel that's used to launch the rocket that is WWE. And at this point, Cody Rhodes, he gets the mic. He's pretty much just unfazed by the comments made by Logan. He essentially calls him a dumbass, but also acknowledges how talented he is and how impressive his resume is in such a short period of time that he's been with WWE, and the short amount of matches or the small amount of matches that he's had. But he also calls him out for constantly using brass knuckles in his matches, and then tells him that he is going to put him in his place. And I'm not sure if this happened to anybody else. There was a lot of, there wasn't like long blackouts, but for some reason my broadcast blacked out during several matches, specifically the Nia Jackson-Naomi match. I feel like it happened probably like 5 times during that match. But in this particular segment, as soon as Cody Rhodes said he was going to put him in his place, it just skipped. Like it fast-forwarded almost immediately to the end of the segment where both of these men are holding up their championship belts and Cody Rhodes' music is playing. And I was like, what the hell did I just miss? Like I said, I'm not sure if it happened to anybody else, but as far as I was concerned in my viewing experience, it did kind of throw off the segment a little bit. But nonetheless, we do figure out who's going to be challenging Cody Rhodes next. Champion versus champion. So one of these guys is going to lose their belt, and do you really think it's going to be Cody Rhodes? Like, do you really think they're going to make Logan Paul a double champ at this point? Down the line, yes, absolutely. Logan Paul has the potential where the sky is truly the limit. Like, I think that he's immensely talented, and if you can't see that, you probably just don't like Logan Paul as a person, which I totally understand as well. He's not the most likable guy, but as far as a WWE wrestler goes, it seems like he was born for this. Like, it seems like he belongs. He fits like a glove. And, he's just as, if not more talented than damn near any person that has the same amount of experience as him. But that still doesn't mean he's going to be the guy to dethrone Cody Rhodes. In fact, Cody Rhodes mentions that, he is lacking a United States Championship reign. In fact, that's the only championship that is eluding him and preventing him from being a Grand Slam champion. So the writing is on the wall. The proof is in the pudding, if you will. And I think that it's only a matter of time before Cody Rhodes is sitting there with 2 championships. One around his waist, one on his shoulder, maybe both on his shoulders. I'm sure he's going to, absolutely market that. The American Nightmare being the United States champion, while also being the undisputed WWE champion. I mean, talk about being on the mountaintop, man. Cody Rhodes is on his way to, John Cena levels as far as a babyface champion. And that's, because John Cena was very polarizing. Not everyone was a John Cena fan. Just like not everybody is a Cody Rhodes fan. And, I totally get that. It's a very subjective sport, and it's a very subjective situation when you talk about Cody Rhodes dethroning Roman Reigns. He was just going to be built, or I guess have an anti-Cody region kind of just built in, that demographic is definitely there. But let's move on here and talk about some matches that took place. The first one that we got was a Queen of the Ring first round match between Naomi and Nia Jax. And it was actually announced that we have a new ring announcer here on SmackDown, Alicia Taylor, another female, former drummer. So she's clearly got music in her blood. I thought she did fine tonight. And obviously, whenever Samantha Irvin's over on Monday Night Raw having a historical run, you're probably going to be in the shadow of her for a while. And you have some pretty high expectations to live up to because of what she set the bar at. But I think that Alicia's going to do just fine here on SmackDown, and hopefully, she starts adding her own little twist on names like we've seen Samantha Irvin do over the past couple of years. But in terms of the actual match, Naomi puts up a hell of a fight, but Nia hits the Annihilator to advance to the next round. And, this was just the first where I was like, pretty good match. Like, as the matches were going on, I felt like the storytelling, the production, just everything as a whole, I was impressed with what I saw from SmackDown tonight. Taking things backstage, we get Baron Corbin being welcomed back to SmackDown from Caleb Braxton. He says that he's learned a lot from his time in NXT, and he's excited to be back. And then Carmelo Hayes walks up and pretty much just pokes fun at him for going undrafted. Whenever Carmelo Hayes was like a first-round pick for SmackDown, or definitely a pretty high pick, I'm pretty sure. But nonetheless, Baron Corbin just getting roasted. The fact that WrestleMania is in Vegas next year, oh man, are we going to see bum-ass Corbin? Are we going to see some type of return of bum-ass Corbin here and that version of himself where he does end up going broke again? I think that could be a very reasonable storyline that they lead up to, where they're going to Vegas. And if it happens at Mania, like WrestleMania weekend, where Baron Corbin just, is confident, he ends up going to the casino, and things don't really work out for him. That's one thing we can kind of look forward to as the year goes on. But as the show goes on, we do get Baron Corbin versus Carmelo Hayes in a King of the Ring first round match. I thought this was going to be a pretty embarrassing, loss for Corbin. Just going into it, I thought that he wasn't going to put up much of a fight at all. And in fact, he makes it a hell of a lot more interesting than I anticipated. But Carmelo Hayes does steal the win with a small package roll-up. So Carmelo Hayes and Nia Jax so far are the 2 advancers from the SmackDown side of both of the brackets. We get another women's match here. First round matchup, Jade Cargill versus Piper Niven. I mean, Jade Cargill's pretty much in like that Cody Rhodes aura right now, where it's like, all right, yeah, there ain't no way in hell she's going to get pinned, especially in a one-on-one match. Yeah, Piper was a hell of a fighter. Like, she can kick some ass in her own right, but Jade Cargill, pretty much in a league of her own at this point, and I don't really anticipate her losing anytime soon. Despite, the interference from Chelsea Green, Jade is just too much of a force to be defeated. So she'll face Nia Jax in the second round of this tournament, keeping things going with the Queen of the Ring first round matchups. Candice LeRae went one-on-one with Bianca Belair, and this was probably the quickest and least interesting match of the night, was Bianca Belair defeating Candice LeRae. As Jade Cargill was leaving the ring, Bianca was coming out because these matches were back-to-back, and both women's tag team champions got a win. One of them was more decisive than the other one. But obviously, Jade had a tougher opponent going up against Piper. but she still made light work, and she still did her job, which is advance and go on to take on, someone as powerful and as dominating as Nia Jax. And Nia's on a pretty good run herself, so I think that she's going to do pretty well on SmackDown. I don't think she's going to beat Jade. Like, this is going to be one of those things where we probably get Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair on a little bit of a collision course, and they face each other as women's tag team champions. That would be pretty entertaining. I'll be honest. I think that could end up going somewhere. But anyways, let's get backstage and talk about something else, something that was a little bit more interesting. Because you guys know how I feel about Solo. Not really my cup of tea. Not really my Solo cup, if you will. But Paul Heyman tries to call him out for his questionable decision making, and then Solo pretty much flips it on Paul Heyman by saying, "Hey, like, you're talking about bad decision making, almost like you making the decision to pull Roman Reigns from the draft, which consequently caused the Bloodline to fall to the third round instead of being a first round pick," which obviously Solo didn't appreciate. Started accusing Paul Heyman of playing with his money, trying to take food off of the table of his kids, yada yada yada. And then he mentions the look that Paul Heyman gave Jey Uso on Monday Night Raw last week, and pretty much just saying, like, hey, or was it on SmackDown? I think it was on SmackDown, actually, whenever he gave him that look. And Solo took it as, like, almost a help me type of facial expression. So, take that, for what it's worth. But he then drops the bombshell that even though Paul Heyman hasn't spoken to Roman Reigns since WrestleMania 40, Solo has. And Roman has made Solo in charge of the Bloodline until he comes back, which means Paul Heyman is the special counsel and the wise man to none other than Solo Sikoa, which, he's doing it reluctantly. He really doesn't want to be the special counsel and the wise man for Solo, but, it kind of is what it is at this point. I think that they're going to do some pretty good stuff with the Bloodline as it continues on in, this version of itself. But I have seen a little bit of, hints that we could get, some Bloodline versus Bloodline, like the OG Bloodline versus this version. Maybe at some point down the line, War Games, Survivor Series, something like that. A couple more King of the Ring matches here to close out the show. The first one was Angelo Dawkins versus Tama Tonga. And this was a relatively easy win for Tonga after Dawkins gets distracted by Solo Sikoa and Tonga Loa beating up Montez Ford outside of the ring. I knew that, Dawkins pretty much had the odds stacked against him in this matchup because Tonga's so new. But at the same time, I was like, man, Angelo Dawkins, I've been complimenting him inside the ring, and they've clearly been pushing him if you look at the way that their matches have gone, where he's been the one that has to come in and save the day, or he's the one that gets that hot tag that pretty much wins the match for his team. And I just thought that maybe they'd give him a little bit of a push here. Let him advance to the next round. It could be one of those questionable, losses for Tama Tonga, but they ended up giving Tama Tonga the win, and he advances in this tournament. The next match, the very last match of the show, the main event, Randy Orton versus AJ Styles. I thought this was a little bit weird for a first round match. Like, this feels like a semifinals/finals type of match in one of these tournaments. But, they gave them 20 minutes here. It was a long match. Obviously, like 3 commercial breaks, their entrances and all that good stuff. But whenever the show started, like, they were coming out at like 8:35, 8:40 or something like that. 20 minutes till the show was over. And I was like, is this the main event? Like, whoa. I felt like they were going to go on a little bit longer there, but, like I said, long 20-minute match. Orton ultimately gets the win with an RKO. Shout out to AJ Styles. Like I said, this is a great match. 2 people from the same era that are still going strong here. And AJ Styles just cannot get a win, but he's so over and everyone knows how talented he is that these losses really don't hurt him. Like, he could come out the very next week and go up against anybody and you wouldn't be able to count AJ Styles out and just be like, oh, well, he's going to lose. No, I think AJ Styles has the credibility and the reputation, the resume, still being at the top of his game where he can still be respected despite losing a match like this just a week after losing a main event match at a pay-per-view. But that does do it for us here, guys. My voice is giving out on me. I'm still getting over whatever it was. I think it was an upper respiratory infection that I had. So luckily it wasn't a third dose of COVID. I, dodged that bullet. But the sickness, as far as, talking and stuff, like, my voice likes to give out a little bit. I noticed whenever I got COVID the first time, I still haven't been able to breathe the same since. Like, as far as, like, my stamina goes, and that was right around the time that I started, getting into podcasting and things like that. I remember that like I would get out of breath a lot quicker than what I used to. And obviously I feel like that had something to do with the COVID sickness, but whatever, that's completely irrelevant. My voice will come back, and hopefully I'll be better for this next month here on the WWE podcast. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hopefully you'll continue to do so. Maybe go over to Football Function. We're about to start Team of Destiny, which is a series that we kind of took a little bit of a break from. But we're going year by year, looking at every single Super Bowl champion and pretty much just going through their season that led up to that Super Bowl victory. We're about to do the 1990 New York Giants, who won Super Bowl 25. So a nice little exciting transitional period into the offseason where we're doing bonus episodes. So hopefully you guys will join us for that. But with all that being said, guys, have a damn good rest of your weekend. Have a happy Mother's Day to all of you mothers out there. And, do something nice if you celebrate it for your mother as well. But thank you guys so much for listening. Have a damn good rest of your weekend. Walk passionately in the direction of your dreams. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the WWE podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.